Sai Ram, dear listeners. Greetings from Sai Glory. Wishing everyone a blessed Guru Purnima. As said by Swami, Du means darkness and Ru means dispelling. Guru means one who dispels darkness.
The first Guru is the mother. Her example, her advice, her admonition affects man deepest and longest.
The second is the father, who is admired by the child for his strength and knowledge, and feared for the punishments he inflicts.
Next is the teacher, who leads him and guides him into the maze of material knowledge.
But the Guru, spiritual preceptor, alone can open the inner eye and cleanse the inner instruments of intuition.
We are all blessed to have Swami as our ultimate Guru, and we offer our humble pranams at his lotus feet.
Sai Glory brings to you a brand new season 4.
And this year, the theme is miracles and mystical experiences.
On this auspicious occasion, we bring to you our first episode by Sri Gantikota Aryama, whose family has been blessed to be in Swami's fold for more than 4 decades.
In this episode, Sri Gantikota Aryama narrates how Swami performed the greatest miracle in his life that made the impossible possible. Let's dive right into the episode as we immerse ourselves in his divinity.
Sai Ram, my name is Gandikota Aryama, and we first met Bhagavan in 1959, 1960, and there are a number of experiences we've had over the years, and one of the most vivid and one that was very important to our family was the miracle of the birth of our first child. And actually the birth of our 3 children, because we were married and after a few years we realized that maybe there's a problem with having children. So my wife and I decided to go to a specialist, the world famous clinic infertility clinic in New York. And they told us that we have some problem, and that with microsurgery there would be a 1 in 3 chance of success. 1 in 3. So it so happened that in 1977, when we had gone, a few months later my parents went on home leave to India, so to see our grandparents and also to see Bhagavan, because we had been devotees for many years, for many decades actually by then. And it was important every year, every time we went back, that we'd go and take Baba's darshan. So in 1977, I also had colitis, which is a recurring or a chronic disease of the large intestine, with bleeding and so on. And so I couldn't go. I had been hospitalized because it got very acute. I was hospitalized for a month. And so then the doctors didn't recommend any travel. So my parents went, but my wife went with them. So they all went to see to Tanuku, which is in Andhra Pradesh, and picked up my grandparents and then went with them to Parthi. So they came in December. They reached, they went to Vrindavan because Swami happened to be in Vrindavan at that time. So Swami, that was that year of December. It happened to be Christmas Eve, December 24, 1977. So that morning, Swami called them in for an interview after darshan, and so they had this the blessed chance of speaking to Swami. There were a number of issues then that they brought up. One of them was that the fact that my younger brother, the third brother, we're 5 brothers and I'm the eldest, the third one was suffering from ileitis, and he had also, against the recommendation of the doctors, had gone along with the parents to see Swami because his condition was worse than mine. He had ileitis, which is an inflammation of the small intestine, and that was also chronic, and he had been hospitalized several times for weeks. So when they were called into the interview, there were these issues, and of course we had told our parents about what the clinic had said, that it would be difficult to have any children until later, unless the surgery was done, and even then there was a really small chance. So all these issues were in the minds of my mother especially, and so as soon as they entered, normally what Swami does is materializes vibhuti and gives it to the ladies in the interview room, not to the men but to the ladies. So he gave this materialized vibhuti to the ladies, including my mother and my grandmother, and then then he asks questions to break the ice, and then you can settle in for the interview. So this interview happened to be an hour and a half interview, quite long. And my mother was going to bring up these issues. First of all, they talked about Manohar and his ileitis issue, and then they talked about me, that I had this chronic colitis. And then they were going to talk about the lack of issue or lack of children, when Swami said, yes, I know, but don't worry, I'll take care of it. There is a little problem, I will take care of it. So he knew even before, of course, everything. So for Manohar, he materialized some vibhuti, rubbed it on his stomach, and then he says, now your ileitis is cured. And he also gave a little vibhuti to take back for me, because he knew my parents told him that I couldn't come, and so then they said but he has this issue, so he says no problem, and he gave some extra vibhuti for me to take back and give to me. Then he said yes, they will definitely have children. I will take care of it. So Swami can change anything. Anything can be done by the Divine Lord, but it takes a little effort on your part to deserve it. So he will always look at what the balances are, and weigh the balances and the outcomes and do what's best for you. So he will cure sometimes, he will not cure sometimes, and we have to go through our karmic path, and the checks and balances, they all work out in the eyes of the divine. So then what so happened is that later on, after this interview, my grandfather was asked to speak by Swami. In the evening, they had an evening talk, and that was when the Sai Gayatri was revealed for the first time. So this was a very significant interview with all these, the miracle of my brother, the vibhuti for me, materializations of various things that were given to people in that interview room, which was mostly the family, and then the revelation of the Sai Gayatri that evening. So all of this occurred on Christmas Eve, and the next day there was the Christmas lunch actually, and there everyone was in the hall, sitting down on the floor with plates, and so a nice lunch was served, and of course it was a nice Andhra style lunch, so nice hot spicy food. And of course my brother Manohar, the third one, he was sitting there and then looked at my father saying, "Can I eat any of this?" So my father said, "No, don't eat. We'll have to have your very bland, non-spicy food. We'll get that when we go. Maybe you can eat some of the rice and perugu, which is buttermilk or yogurt. Just that. Don't eat this. It's very hot and spicy." Then Swami was walking along the aisles of the people sitting, and then he came up to my parents and my brother. The men sit on one side, of course, and the ladies on the other. So he came up to my father and Manohar, and my brothers my other brothers who were also sitting. They're all gone. I was the only one missing. So then he asked Manohar, "Why aren't you eating?" I told you everything is cured. Now you can eat anything you want. So my brother looked at father, and he said, and then questioningly, and then my father said, Swami says it's okay, just eat, but eat a little. So he whispered. And so then, but Swami heard that, of course, and he said, no, eat fully. And you're now back to normal. You have no problems. And so then he gave the signal to go ahead. So then he ate heartily for the first time in a year. He was able to take normal food, normal Andhra food, the hot curries, the pulusu, and dal or sambar, and the chutneys, vada, everything to his heart's content. He was able to eat for the first time in a year. So then they all came back after that, and after that I got the vibhuti for myself, and that cured my colitis too. So that interview had all these things, and he said, so when Bhagavan said, oh yes, now that he had cured us, that cured me, and that we would have children, we were very anxious now. We'll have the child soon. But then a year stretched, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, and then that after 2 years, my wife and I went to see Swami separately, and then he gave us several interviews, 2 interviews that time, and that was in '79. That we went, and then he told us, "Now you will have children." Yes, and he smiled, and of course we didn't question him anymore on that. He gave his blessings. Then another 2 years went by, and still no sign. Then we went again in '81. Same story. We had a nice darshan, interviews, and the Swami repeated the same. So now we felt, we have to really wait patiently, and when the time is ripe, then Swami will bestow the boon. So we decided not to press Swami and not ask again. But we went again several times, and finally it was 1987, the summer, July or something in 1987, that my wife and I went again. Then at that time, because basically it's hard to, as you get older, everyone's working, and it's hard to arrange a whole family going. My parents would go separately, we'd go separately. But in 1985, actually, my parents retired and went back to Parthi, and they settled in Parthi with my grandfather. So then in 1986, my grandfather passed away. So this was 1987. And then my parents were there, but Swami granted us an interview with the family, and then separately another interview. And the way this happened was that 1987 we went to Parthi, and Swami gave us 2 interviews, and he discussed many things, but never mentioned anything about children or a child. And so then we decided I had to go back after a certain time, 10 days basically, and then we had to leave. So we took leave of Swami, and then we went to Bangalore that night, and then stayed in a hotel. And the next morning when we got up, we went out shopping, went to Brigade Road, and there on Brigade Road, my wife bought some things, and I bought some books. And then we saw there was this Poompuhar, that's the Tamil Nadu handicraft store in Brigade Road. And there we saw some very nice vigrahas of Gayatri. And so we checked out, there were 5 vigrahas of Gayatri. So we carefully examined each one to see which one had the best features, no defects, everything. Finally we picked one, and then we bought that. Then we decided to go back to the hotel for lunch. And so when we went to the hotel, there was a message for me from Father saying that morning Swami had come to Vrindavan, and he had asked him to go with him. So that morning Swami and Father had come to Vrindavan, and so his Father in the message said, check out of the hotel and come immediately. So we checked out of this hotel, and then went to the Vrindavan ashram. And there, Swami had arranged a room for us. So we checked into the room, and then, of course, talked to Father. and he was very happy. He says, now this is a unique chance for you. You're staying here a couple of days, so now you can get another interview with Swami. And of course, every interview is precious. And so then Swami called us in. This time it was just the three of us, my father and the two of us, my wife and I. My wife, her name is Bala Tripura Sundari. We call her Bala for short. So then when we came into the interview, we had the usual vibhuti given to Bala. And then we were sitting on his interview room in Vrindavan. And then there's a carpet on the floor, so it's nice and cushy. And then Swami was sitting on a chair, and we could sit right up against his feet next to him. And then Swami allows people who sit there who can, with permission, can massage his feet. So I was massaging his feet. They're very soft feet. It's like a lady's feet, very soft, tender soles, and he's a divine Lord. So those tender soles will walk on the feet, will walk on harsh ground, but he's always clean and tender. So we had this very nice darshan and an experience that we were able to talk to Swami again. And then he says, yes, I know you're thinking that you don't have children, and you're thinking if Swami will keep his word. And yes, he says, Swami will always keep his word. Now is the time. And he waved his hand and materialized this very fragrant vibhuti, and said and gave to both of us and says, take this in. And so then that was different from other vibhutis that he had given. It was very, very fine, but it also had little, like little balls, tiny like mustard seeds, or even smaller than that, very small mustard seed size. But it was all vibhuti in the form of those seeds. Okay, and then we took the vibhuti. It was very fragrant. The room was full of this fragrance. It says, now you will have children. So this was 10 years later, from 1977 to 1987, 10 years. So you have to do your sadhana. The right time comes, and Swami's words come true. So patience is taught us. Patience, you have to be patient. You have to wait. Once Swami has given that word, it's a blessing that will always come. So then, so it says, now you can go back to New Jersey happy. He smiled and laughed. And so this was another interview, 10 years later. And one thing I have to say is that when we checked the horoscopes, Bala had 3 children according to astrology, 3. And mine, 0. No, none. So how could this happen? By divine grace, he can turn anything anywhere. So that's the story. That's the miracle of. And then the next year, we had Jayavardhan was born in March of 1988. So this was the divine will. And of course, we only expected one. And then 1 year later, actually about 18 months later, we had our second son was born. And in the case of Jayavardhan, who was born in 1988 in March, we sent a telegram to my father. Actually, at the time of the interview, when Swami had said we'll have the children, then my father said, yes, as soon as you get the notice of that the baby is arriving, then send a telegram immediately to Swami. And then Swami said, no, you don't have to send a telegram to me. I will know. Send a telegram to your father. So as soon as he was born, we sent the telegram to father. And then father that day or the next morning went to Darshan, went up to Swami and told him this. And then he gave the name right then and there. So within a day, we had Jayavardhan's name given by Swami in Parthi. And in those days, of course, it wasn't easy to make a call. So telegrams were still in use. It's not like today. So then we were able to go back, and then 18 months later, we had the second one. That was Aryavardhan was the name given by Swami. There, it took a few months, so we gave him the temporary name of Sai. So then, some months later, we got the blessing and notification of Aryavardhan's name. And that wasn't all. 2 years later, we had a daughter named that Swami gave the name Vijayashri. So Jayavardhan, Aryavardhan, and Vijayashri. All the blessings of Swami. So it was the divine will that changed everything for us. So from no children, we went to 3 children. Our house was full. So it was a big blessing that Swami gave. All coming from that 1977 magnificent interview with multiple miracles of creation, of healing, and the Sai Gayatri being revealed. It was such a wonderful event at that time.